The library was a tomb of whispers, its silence shattered by the sudden blackout. Rain lashed the windows, and the world outside Oberlin College's main library dissolved into a gray blur. Ethan Caldwell, a 21-year-old history major, stood frozen in the stacks, my flashlight app casting a feeble glow over rows of leather-bound books. It was too late for anyone to be here except me, cramming for a midterm on the American Revolution. The power outage hit without warning, plunging the library into darkness. My heart raced, not from fear of the dark, but from the eerie sense that I wasn't alone. A faint rustle came from the next aisle, like pages turning or a foot scuffing the carpet. I gripped my phone tighter, its light trembling in my hand. "Is someone there?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer, but the air felt heavier, like it held a secret. I stepped forward, my sneakers silent on the worn carpet, and rounded the corner. That's when I saw him, a stranger, leaning against a shelf, his silhouette sharp against the faint emergency lights. He was tall, maybe my age, with dark hair falling into his eyes and a leather jacket that smelled faintly of rain and cedar. His gaze locked onto mine, and for a moment, the world stopped. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said, his voice low, almost teasing. "Just looking for a book." His lips curved into a half-smile, but his eyes held something deeper, something that made my pulse skip. I should have walked away, gone back to my notes, but I didn't. I couldn't. "I'm Ethan," I said, surprising myself. I wasn't the type to talk to strangers, especially not in a dark, empty library. I was the guy who kept his head down, who hid behind glasses and stacks of books, who never told anyone he was gay, not his parents, not his roommate, not even himself. Not really. "Jasper," he replied, stepping closer. The space between us shrank, and I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his jacket hung loose on his frame. "You always study in the dark, Ethan." I laughed, nervous, and adjusted my glasses. "Only when the power goes out." My attempt at humor felt weak, but he grinned, and something in me stirred a warmth I hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. We stood there, the storm raging outside, the library a cocoon of shadows and secrets. He tilted his head, studying me. "You don't seem like the type to be here alone on a Friday night." "Neither do you," I shot back, surprising myself again. Flirting wasn't my thing, or so I thought. But Jasper's presence was like a spark in the dark, igniting something I'd buried deep. I wanted to know him, to understand why his eyes held a mix of mischief and pain. The emergency lights flickered, plunging us into near darkness again. I heard him move closer, his breath warm against my cheek. "You ever do something you know you shouldn't?" he whispered. Before I could answer, his lips brushed Minea, fleeting, electric touch that sent my heart into freefall. The kiss lasted only a second, but it burned through me, unraveling everything I thought I knew about myself. He pulled back, and I saw the shock in his eyes, mirroring my own. "I'm sorry," he said, stepping away. "I shouldn't have." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice shaking. "Don't apologize." I didn't know why I said it, but I meant it. The library, the storm, the world, it all faded. There was only Jasper, and the truth I'd been running from my whole life. We stood in silence, the weight of that kiss hanging between us. Then the lights flickered back on, harsh and unforgiving, and Jasper was gone, slipping into the stacks like a ghost. I touched my lips, still tingling, and knew nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, I couldn't focus. My notes on the Battle of Bunker Hill blurred into meaningless scribbles. All I could think about was Jasper's voice, his touch, The way he'd vanished. I didn't even know his last name, but I needed to find him. Oberlin wasn't a big school. He couldn't be that hard to track down. Or so I thought. I started with the library, asking the staff if they'd seen a guy in a leather jacket. No luck. I checked the student directory, scoured social media, even lingered in the library's history section for days, hoping he'd show up. Nothing. It was like he'd never existed. But that kiss was too real to be a dream. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that night gnawed at me. I'd always known I was different, but I'd shoved those feelings down, locked them away. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I'd heard the whispers, seen the looks. Being gay wasn't safe. Not where I was from. But Jasper's kiss had cracked something open, and I couldn't close it again. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way my roommate, Mike, talked about his girlfriend with such ease. The way my parents asked when I'd bring a girl home. I wanted to scream that I didn't want a girl, that I never had. But fear kept me silent. Fear of rejection, of losing the life I'd built, of being seen. Then, one rainy afternoon, I saw him. Jasper, sitting in the campus coffee shop, his leather jacket slung over a chair. He was reading a battered copy of On the Road, his dark hair falling into his eyes. My heart lurched, and I froze, torn between running to him and running away. I took a deep breath and walked over. Jasper. My voice was barely audible over the hum of the coffee shop. He looked up, and for a moment, his face was unreadable. Then he smiled, that same half-smile from the library. "Ethan," he said, like he'd been expecting me. "Took you long enough." We talked for hours, the coffee shop emptying around us. Jasper was a senior, an art major, openly gay, and unapologetically himself. He'd grown up in Chicago, where being out wasn't a death sentence. But he carried scars, stories of a father who didn't understand, of friends who turned their backs. His confidence hid a vulnerability that made my chest ache. "Why'd you kiss me?" I asked finally, my voice low. He leaned back, his eyes searching mine. "Because I saw you, Ethan. Really saw you. And I thought maybe you needed to see yourself too." His words hit like a punch. I'd spent my life hiding, pretending, but Jasper saw through it all. And for the first time, I wanted to be seen. That coffee shop conversation became a turning point. Jasper and I started meeting regularly, first by chance, then by design. We'd grab coffee, wander the campus, or sit in the library where it all began, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about his art, how he painted to make sense of the world. I shared my obsession with history, how I loved piecing together the past to understand the present. But beneath the surface, something deeper was growing, a connection that scared me as much as it thrilled me. I wasn't ready to call it love. Not yet. Love was too big, too dangerous. I'd seen what happened when people like me got too close to the truth. My high school friend, Ryan, had come out senior year and lost everything: his family, his friends, his place on the football team. I couldn't risk that. Not yet. But Jasper made it hard to stay guarded. He'd tease me about my buttoned-up shirts, then lean in close to fix my collar, his fingers brushing my neck. Every touch was a reminder of that kiss, a spark that refused to fade. One night, as we walked through Oberlin's Tappan Square, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, he stopped and looked at me. "You ever gonna let me in, Ethan?" he asked, his voice soft but piercing. I wanted to say yes, to tell him everything, how he made me feel alive, how he terrified me. But the words caught in my throat. Instead, I kissed him. It was impulsive, desperate, and perfect. His lips were warm, and for a moment, the world felt right. But the world wasn't always kind. The next day, I overheard Mike talking to his girlfriend on the phone, complaining about guys like that on campus, his voice dripping with disgust. He didn't know about me, but his words cut deep. I started pulling back from Jasper, skipping our coffee dates, avoiding the library. I told myself it was safer this way, but every day without him felt emptier. Jasper wasn't one to give up, though. He found me in the history department lounge, my nose buried in a book. "You're avoiding me," he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "I'm not," I lied, my eyes fixed on the page. He sat across from me, his gaze unrelenting. "Ethan, I get it. You're scared. But you can't keep running from who you are." "I'm not running," I snapped, louder than I meant. Heads turned, and I felt my face burn. Jasper didn't flinch. He just waited, his eyes steady, like he could see the storm inside me. I wanted to tell him about Ryan, about the fear that kept me up at night, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood and left, my heart pounding. I thought distance would protect me, but it only made the ache worse. Weeks passed, and I threw myself into my studies, trying to forget Jasper. But his absence was a shadow, following me everywhere. I started noticing things: couples holding hands, pride flags in dorm windows, a world I'd never let myself be part of. I wanted to be brave, like Jasper, but courage felt out of reach. Then, during a lecture on the civil rights movement, my professor said something that hit me hard. Change doesn't come from staying silent. It comes from standing up, even when it's hard. I thought of Jasper, of the way he lived so openly, despite the scars he carried. I thought of myself, hiding behind books and excuses. That night, I found him at an art gallery on campus, his paintings on display. They were raw, vibrant, full of emotion, portraits of people caught in moments of joy and pain. One painting stopped me cold, a figure in a dark library, holding a book, his face half lit by a faint glow. It was me. Jasper appeared beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. "What do you think?" he asked, his voice quiet. "It's me," I said, my throat tight. "Yeah," he said. "You're hard to forget." I turned to him, my heart racing. "I'm sorry I pushed you away. I was scared." He nodded, like he'd known all along. Fear's a powerful thing. But so is this. He took my hand, his fingers warm and steady, and I didn't pull away. Holding Jasper's hand in that crowded gallery felt like stepping off a cliff. My heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the thrill of being seen. I wasn't ready to tell the world, but I was ready to stop hiding from him. We left the gallery together, the night air cool against my skin, and walked to his dorm, talking until dawn. He showed me sketches he'd never shared with anyone, stories of his life in Chicago, the good and the bad. I told him about my small-town upbringing, the pressure to be the perfect son, the secret I'd kept even from myself. Our relationship grew in stolen moments: late-night talks, quiet walks, kisses in empty classrooms. But the world kept intruding. One afternoon, Mike saw us together in the quad, Jasper's arm slung casually over my shoulder. His eyes narrowed, and later, he cornered me in our dorm. "What's going on with you and that guy?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Nothing," I said, my stomach twisting. "We're just friends." Mike didn't look convinced, but he dropped it. Still, his suspicion hung over me like a storm cloud. I started avoiding Jasper again, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know how to navigate this. Coming out meant risking everything: me family, my friends, the life I'd built. But losing Jasper felt like losing myself. One night, Jasper texted me to meet him at the library, I hesitated, but the memory of that first kiss pulled me back. The library was quiet. No storms or blackouts this time. Just the soft hum of fluorescent lights. Jasper was waiting in the history section, holding a book I'd mentioned once. The Price of Salt. You read this yet? He asked, his eyes twinkling. I shook my head, my cheeks warming. Not yet. You should. It's about people like us. He handed me the book, his fingers lingering on mine. People who find each other, even when it's hard. We sat in a study nook, reading passages to each other, laughing at the outdated slang. But the story's weight hit Metwo women defying the world to be together, risking everything for love. I wanted that courage, but fear still clung to me. Jasper, I said, my voice low. What if I'm not ready? What if I never am? He took my hand, his grip firm. You don't have to be ready for everything. Just for this. For us. His words were a lifeline, but they couldn't erase the dread building inside me. The next day, Mike confronted me again, this time with a photo he'd snapped of Jasper and me, our hands intertwined. You gonna explain this? He demanded, holding up his phone. My mouth went dry. It's not what you think. Then what is it? His voice was loud, drawing stares from other students in the dorm lounge. I felt exposed, trapped. I mumbled something about needing space and fled, my heart racing. I avoided Jasper for days, ignoring his texts, skipping classes we shared. But the guilt was unbearable. I wasn't just hiding from Mike or my family, I was hiding from myself. I thought of Jasper's painting, of the way he'd seen me when I couldn't see myself. I didn't want to lose that. I found him at the art studio, paint smudged on his cheek, working on a new canvas. I'm sorry, I said, my voice breaking. I keep messing this up. He set down his brush, his eyes soft. You're not messing it up. You're figuring it out. That's different. I wanted to believe him, but the fear was still there, a shadow I couldn't shake. What if I come out and everything falls apart? Then we rebuild, he said simply. Together. Jasper's words stayed with me, but they didn't make the decision easier. Coming out wasn't just about Mike, it was about my family, my friends, the life I'd built to keep everyone happy. My parents were conservative, small-town folks who went to church every Sunday and expected me to follow their path. I'd never told them about the feelings I'd buried since high school, the crushes I'd ignored, the truth I'd locked away. Jasper made me want to be honest, but honesty felt like a minefield. We kept seeing each other, but I was too careful. No more public displays. No more casual touches in the quad. Jasper didn't push, but I could see the hurt in his eyes when I pulled away from a hug or changed the subject when he mentioned the future. He deserved better, but I didn't know how to give it to him. One evening, we went to a campus poetry reading, sitting in the back to avoid attention. The poet, a queer woman from Cleveland, read lines about love and defiance that cut straight to my heart. Jasper squeezed my hand under the table, and for a moment, I let myself imagine a life where I didn't have to hide. But when the reading ended, I saw Mike in the crowd, his eyes fixed on us. I dropped Jasper's hand like it burned. Back at my dorm, Mike was waiting. You're not just friends with him, are you? He said, his voice low but sharp. I froze, my heart pounding. Why do you care? Because I thought I knew you, he said, his face hard. You've been lying to everyone. His words stung, not because they were wrong, but because they were true. I'd been lying to him, to my family, to myself. I wanted to tell him the truth, to say I was gay, that I was falling for Jasper, but fear choked me. Instead, I said nothing. and Mike walked out, slamming the door. The next day, I heard rumors, whispers in the dining hall, glances in class. Mike had told people, or someone had seen us, or both. Oberlin was progressive, but gossip was universal, and I felt the weight of every stare. I stopped going to the library, stopped answering Jasper's texts. I thought if I could just disappear, the rumors would too. But Jasper wasn't one to let me fade away. He found me in Tappan Square, sitting alone on a bench, my breath visible in the cold November air. "You can't keep doing this, Ethan," he said, sitting beside me. "You can't keep shutting me out." "I'm trying to protect us," I said, my voice shaking. "You don't know what it's like, growing up where I did. If my parents find out, then they find out," he said, his voice firm but kind. "You can't live your life for them. You have to live it for you." I wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't that simple, but his hand found mine, and the warmth of his touch silenced my fears, if only for a moment. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, "but you have to decide what you want." That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Jasper was right, I had to choose. Not just between him and my old life, but between fear and freedom. I thought of Ryan, my high school friend, who'd lost so much but gained himself. I thought of Jasper's painting, of the way he saw me. I wanted to be that person, not the one hiding in the shadows. The next morning, I called my parents. My hands shook as I dialed, but I couldn't keep lying. "Mom, Dad," I said, my voice barely steady. "There's something I need to tell you." The call was brutal. My mom cried. My dad went silent, and I could feel their disappointment through the phone. "We didn't raise you this way," my dad said finally, his voice cold. "You need to fix this, Ethan." I tried to explain, to tell them about Jasper, about the person I was becoming, but they didn't want to hear it. When I hung up, I felt hollow, like I'd lost a piece of myself. But I also felt lighter, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd carried for years. I told Jasper about the call that night, sitting on his dorm room floor, a half-finished painting of a stormy sky behind him. He listened, his eyes steady, and when I finished, he pulled me into a hug. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft against my ear. "That took guts." "It doesn't feel like guts," I said, my voice muffled against his shoulder. "It feels like I broke everything." "You didn't break anything," he said, pulling back to look at me. "You're building something new. It's messy, but it's yours." His words gave me hope, but the fallout was immediate. My parents stopped calling, and when they did, it was to lecture me about choices and consequences. Mike moved out of our dorm, leaving a note that said, "I can't live with this." The rumors on campus grew louder, and I felt like I was walking through a minefield every day. But Jasper was there, a constant in the chaos, and I clung to him like a lifeline. We started spending more time together, no longer hiding. We'd hold hands in the coffee shop, kiss in Tappan Square, laugh in the library where it all began. Oberlin's progressive bubble made it easier, but not perfect. There were still stares, whispers, moments when I wanted to shrink back into the shadows. But Jasper's confidence was contagious, and I started to believe I could be brave too. One day, we ran into Ryan, my high school friend, at a campus queer alliance event. He'd transferred to Oberlin, and seeing him felt like fate. "You're doing okay," he said, grinning, when I told him about Jasper. "Took you long enough." Ryan's presence reminded me that I wasn't alone, that there was a community out there for people like me. Jasper and I started attending alliance meetings, and I met others who'd faced the same fears, the same losses. Their stories gave me strength, but they also made me realize how much I still had to lose. My parents sent an email a week later, asking me to come home for Thanksgiving. "We need to talk," it said, and I knew what that meant, a chance to fix me. I showed the email to Jasper, my hand shaking. "Are you gonna go?" he asked, his voice neutral but his eyes searching. "I don't know," I said. "What if they try to change me?" "Then you tell them who you are," he said, "and you walk away if they can't handle it." I wanted to believe it was that simple, but the thought of losing my family for good was paralyzing. Jasper saw the fear in my eyes and took my hand. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "I'll go with you, if you want." The idea of Jasper meeting my parents terrified me, but it also gave me courage. I nodded, and we made plans to drive to my hometown in southern Ohio. A 6-hour trip that felt like a journey into the unknown. The drive to my parents' house was quiet, the Ohio countryside blurring past in shades of gray and brown. Jasper drove, his hand resting on mine between gear shifts, while I stared out the window, my stomach in knots. I hadn't been home since I'd come out, and the closer we got, the more I doubted my decision. What if they rejected me outright? What if they rejected Jasper? We pulled into the driveway of my childhood home, a modest ranch house with a sagging porch. My mom opened the door before I could knock, her eyes red but her smile forced. "Ethan," she said, hugging me tightly. My dad stood behind her, his face unreadable. They barely acknowledged Jasper, and the tension was suffocating. Dinner was a disaster. My dad grilled me about my choices, his voice rising with every question. My mom tried to mediate, but her tears only made it worse. Jasper stayed calm, his hand on my knee under the table, but I could see the anger in his eyes when my dad called our relationship unnatural. "I love him," I said finally, the words bursting out before I could stop them. The table went silent, and my parents stared at me like I was a stranger. Jasper squeezed my hand, grounding me, but the weight of their disappointment was crushing. After dinner, my dad pulled me aside. "You're throwing your life away," he said, his voice low. "You can still fix this. Get help. Come back to who you were." "I am who I was," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm just not hiding anymore." He walked away, and I knew that was the end of the son they thought they knew. My mom hugged me before we left, whispering, "I just want you to be happy." But her words felt hollow, like she didn't believe happiness was possible for someone like me. Jasper and I drove back to Oberlin in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on us. When we reached his dorm, he pulled me into his arms. "You were brave," he said, "braver than you know." I didn't feel brave. I felt broken, like I'd lost my family for good. But Jasper's arms around me, his steady heartbeat against mine, reminded me that I wasn't alone. We fell asleep tangled together, the world outside fading away. The next few weeks were a blur of finals and holiday preparations, but the rift with my parents lingered. I threw myself into my studies, into Jasper, into the queer alliance, trying to build a new sense of family. Jasper's art became my refuge. His paintings told stories of resilience, of love that refused to be silenced. I started writing again, not just history papers, but essays about my journey, my truth. One night, Jasper showed me a new painting, a vibrant scene of two figures in a library, their hands touching, a storm raging outside. "It's us," he said, his voice soft. "The night we met." I stared at the painting, my throat tight. It wasn't just use, it was every moment of fear, hope, and love we'd shared since. "It's perfect," I said, and I meant it. Christmas break came, and I stayed on campus, unable to face going home. Jasper stayed too, his own family fractured by years of distance. We spent the holiday in his dorm, decorating a tiny tree with paper ornaments, laughing over burnt cookies we tried to bake in the communal kitchen. It wasn't the Christmas I'd grown up with, but it felt like home. We talked about the future graduation, jobs, where we'd go. Jasper wanted to move to New York, to chase his art in a city that never slept. I was scared of leaving Oberlin's safety, but the idea of building a life with him made the fear bearable. "We'll figure it out," he said, kissing my forehead. "Together." But the world had other plans. In January, a video surfaced on a grainy clip from the poetry reading, showing Jasper and me holding hands. Someone had posted it with a caption, "Oberlin's finest," flaunting their sin. The comments were brutal, a mix of support and hate. But the hate cut deeper. I saw my parents' faces in every cruel word, their rejection echoing in the anonymous vitriol. Jasper shrugged it off, but I couldn't. The video spread, and soon, my parents called. "We saw it," my mom said, her voice shaking. "Everyone in town is talking. How could you do this to us?" I wanted to scream that I wasn't doing anything to them, that I was just trying to live. But I stayed calm, for Jasper's sake. "I'm not ashamed," I said. "I'm happy." They hung up, and I knew that was the end. No more calls, no more emails. I was on my own. But I wasn't alone. Jasper was there, and so was the Queer Alliance, Ryan, and a handful of friends who'd stuck by me. They became my family, pieced together from shared stories and shared strength. Jasper's senior art show was the turning point. His paintings filled the gallery, each one a story of love, loss, and defiance. The library painting was the centerpiece, drawing gasps from the crowd. I stood beside him, my hand in his, no longer afraid of who might see. When he dedicated the show to me, tears stung my eyes. "For Ethan," he said, his voice steady. "For showing me what courage looks like." The crowd applauded, and for the first time, I felt proud not just of Jasper, but of myself. I'd lost so much, but I'd gained more. I'd found love, community, and a truth I could live with. Spring came, and with it, a sense of renewal. Jasper graduated, his diploma a ticket to New York, and I had one more year at Oberlin. We decided to make it work, no matter the distance. We'd survived too much to let go now. Blackouts, rumors, family rejection, hate. Our love was stronger than all of it. I started writing a blog, sharing my story anonymously at first, then under my own name. It was terrifying, but liberating. People reached out, students, strangers, even a cousin who'd seen the video and wanted to reconnect. My words became a bridge, connecting me to others who felt alone, who needed to know they weren't. Jasper's art took off in New York, his paintings selling faster than he could create them. He'd call me late at night, his voice crackling through the phone, telling me about galleries and dreams. I'd visit when I could, losing myself in the city's chaos, finding myself in his arms. We'd walk through Central Park, his hand in mine, no longer caring who saw. One day, I got a letter from my mom. No return address, just a single page. "I don't understand," she wrote, "but I'm trying. I love you, Ethan." It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was a start. I showed it to Jasper, and he smiled. "See, the world keeps turning." We returned to Oberlin for a Queer Alliance reunion, standing in the library where it all began. The stacks were the same, the air still thick with the scent of old books. But I was different. I wasn't the scared kid hiding behind glasses anymore. I was Ethan, out and proud, In love with a man who'd changed my life with a kiss in the dark. As we stood there, Jasper pulled me close, his lips brushing mine. You ever think about that night? He asked. Every day? I said, smiling. It was the start of everything. And it was. That kiss. That blackout. That moment when a stranger's song might set me on a path I never could have imagined. I'd lost a family, but I'd found a new one. I'd faced fear and found courage. And I'd learned that love, real love, was worth every risk. We walked out of the library hand in hand, the sun setting over Oberlin, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The world wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and we'd fight for it together.